Two tech company CEOs are found dead within 30 days of one another in the same area. Were they connected, or was it just coincidence? Hello, true crimeers. This is the case of Erin Valenti and Tushar Atre. Viewer discretion is advised. At the time of this case, Erin Valenti is 33 years old and she is living in Salt Lake City, Utah. Erin was the founder of a company called Tinker Ventures, and she was also its CEO. She had somewhere around 100 to 130 employees, and I guess she had worked at Overstock.com previously before this. Erin would go on various trips, business-related trips, and one of her trips would take her to the Silicon Valley area of California. She was on one of these trips in October of 2019. Erin attended some business meetings or a conference there. She was observed by many people. She had been inquiring about a lot of new technologies and just looking for new ideas. After this 3-day trip is over with, she goes to visit a friend. She sees that friend. The friend says she's totally normal, everything seems fine. Erin leaves to go back to the airport. And this is when it gets strange. Erin Valenti, I guess from her rental car on the way to the airport, would call her family, and she was demonstrating some very bizarre behavior. They would say that she seemed frantic and a little erratic, which was extremely unlike her. Erin Valenti had no diagnosed mental health issues. It doesn't mean she didn't have any. She just didn't have any, diagnosed. But according to one of her family members, Erin Valenti on the phone said this phrase, quote, "It's all a game. It's a thought experiment. We're in the Matrix," end quote. And then she vanished. She never got on her flight. She never arrived back home to Utah, and her family became very concerned, obviously. So on October 7th, 2019, after they failed to get a hold of her or see her, they reported her missing. I want to say to police first in the San Jose area, because that's where she last was seen. Apparently, the police there did not actually formally submit the missing persons report until several days after the family called. And when they did so, the police labeled it a voluntarily missing type thing, meaning they're saying that Erin disappeared on her own accord, without any actual proof or evidence of that. Then, 5 days or so after she is reported missing, her rental vehicle is found parked down a residential street. It was a gray Nissan Murano, and allegedly it had been parked there for 5 days. When they look inside the car, in the back seat of the car, they find a woman, soon to be identified as Erin Valenti. Erin was deceased. There were no signs of trauma. There were no knife wounds, there was no blood, no gunshot wounds, no scratches, no signs of defense on her hands or anywhere, no sign of a struggle. She looked completely normal and was in the back of her rental car. When a coroner did the autopsy and they ran a toxicology test, there were no drugs in her system. There was no alcohol in her system. This includes prescription drugs, there was nothing. She was clean. There was no discernible cause of death. Eventually, the San Jose coroner would state that she died of natural causes from some kind of manic episode. You don't die of manic episodes. You don't die of a mental health issue. The actual mental health issue doesn't kill you. And so there weren't even signs of she did this to herself, there was no cut wrists, there was no pills taken. Erin Valenti just died in her car, parked down a residential street in Silicon Valley. And her family just found it very strange that her behavior just before this was completely out of character. She was talking a million miles a minute, her dad would say. She was saying bizarre things that they had never observed in her before. And anyone who saw her just leading up to her eventual death, said everything seemed normal. She was not acting unusual or strange. So nobody knows what happened to her. Roughly a week before she was reported missing, another CEO who actually lived in the Santa Cruz, California area near Silicon Valley, a man named Tushar Atre, he was abducted from his home in Santa Cruz. He was the CEO of a company called AtreNet. I guess it was like a web design and marketing company, and he was doing really well for himself. He lived in this big, beautiful home. He had a girlfriend at the time of this case. He was like a very happy dude. Again, he didn't seem anything out of the ordinary around this time. He didn't indicate that anyone was after him or that he had any known public enemies. He was also, I guess he owned cannabis properties where they would grow cannabis, and he had employees who worked for him doing that. But at any rate, around 3 o'clock in the morning on October 1st, 2019, Tushar Atre was abducted from his home, which is located like right on the cliffside. There is CCTV footage of 3 men approaching his house, and they are seen outside in this neighborhood. And then they also have CCTV of the vehicle that Tushar's girlfriend owned speeding away from the house. And that was literally, it was capturing the abduction of Tushar Atre. There was no like ransom notes left behind. There were no ransom calls. Several hours go by and Tushar's girlfriend's car is found, and inside the car is the body of Tushar Atre. He had been stabbed numerous times and shot in the back of the head. Then a few days later, you have the disappearance of another tech CEO, in Erin Valenti, but she had no signs of trauma or, no indications of an actual murder. Were they connected? For a little bit of time there, police had to think, well, this crazy coincidence that these two big, wealthy CEOs of tech companies go missing and or are found dead within the same time frame, they have to be connected, right? There was actually a point when this eco-terrorist group would come out with a statement that read, quote, "Wishing death to all of civilization, our group of extremists happily murdered 2 tech executives in the West Coast, Tushar Atre and Erin Valenti. We conducted the killings for no other reason than the symbolism of seeing 2 flimsy appendages of the techno-industrial system lying first in agony and then motionless before us." This was a group called the Individualists Tending Toward the Wild USA Nature's Wrath, or ITS. And I think they would probably look into this, but it ended up being just absolutely nothing and meaningless. This essentially was a lie. When they were looking into Tushar Atre's murder, a couple of names kept popping up: Stephen Lindsay and Caleb Charters. These 2 men had worked on one of his cannabis farms, and this is an image of the 2 men literally doing work on one of his properties. They really just did hard labor, manual labor for him, putting up posts and doing some planting. They had only been working for him for a few weeks, maybe a month or 2 before this murder happened. The police would learn that there was a lot of animosity from these 2 men towards Tushar. He had actually, I guess Tushar had stopped a payment on their paychecks. And one of the men would admit to police that this really pissed them off so much, they wanted to fight Tushar. Like they admitted they wanted to be kind of violent towards him. They found out that I guess Tushar Atre would make these guys do push-ups in front of other people as like some kind of like punishment or something, but in the end it humiliated the men who worked, on this farm. This is allegedly according to them, by the way. They would learn that eventually, after there was an argument between the men and Tushar, he did end up giving them their paycheck, but only a partial payment. Then they found out that Caleb's brother, Curtis Charters, and then a friend of theirs named Joshua Camps were also, in the area during the time that this kidnapping took place. And through a series of investigative looks into things like CCTV, cell phone data, evidence they had from the crime scenes, they were able to ascertain that Stephen Lindsay and Caleb Charters were the masterminds behind this attempted robbery to get a lot of money out of Tushar Atre that eventually led to his death. And that the other two men's names I mentioned were helping them do this. So all four men have now been arrested and charged with murder and kidnapping of Tushar Atre. The most recent update was, I think, in December of 2023, so just a few months ago, and there has not been a trial yet. I do know that all four men have pled not guilty to these crimes, but a trial has not occurred. I think they expect the trial to happen sometime in this first half of 2024, but I can't say for certain. In terms of them having any links or connections to Erin Valenti, no. In the end, it turns out that this was literally just a coincidence, that two tech company CEOs were found dead within the same month. And so hopefully Tushar Atre is on his way to getting the justice he deserves. But then you have Erin Valenti's case, where this is just a very strange mystery. How exactly did she die? That's the question they still wonder. With absolutely no signs of trauma to her body, no cuts, no bruises, no gunshot wounds, no stab wounds, no broken bones, no fractures, no drugs or alcohol in her system, including prescription drugs. So there was no overdose. There was no indications that she did this to herself. How on earth did this pretty healthy young woman, how did she end up dead in the back of her own rental car and she just died of natural causes? How did that happen? I mean, sure, people die of natural causes all the time. It's not like it's impossible, but it just seems very strange. And so I think her family is still they just really want to keep pushing this to see if there was foul play involved. And hopefully one day they get the answers to that question. So one person hopefully will get justice soon, and hopefully one day Erin Valenti's family will get the answers they are looking for.